Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she crouched inside the small, dark closet, struggling to steady her breathing. She pressed her hand over her mouth, praying it would stifle the sound of her panicked breaths. Through the narrow slats of the closet door, she saw Mark's shadow stretched across the room as he entered. Her stomach twisted as his familiar footsteps grew closer. "Lily, sweetie? Are you ready for our special game?" His voice, once a source of comfort and security, now dripped with a chilling sweetness that sent icy shivers down Sarah's spine. The darkness felt suffocating as her mind raced, torn between the overwhelming urge to burst out and protect her daughter and the desperate need to stay hidden, recording everything to gather irrefutable evidence. Every instinct screamed at her to act, but she knew she couldn't risk tipping him off too soon. She needed proof, solid, undeniable proof that would leave no room for him to twist the truth. As Mark's voice grew softer, he moved closer to the bed where Lily sat huddled, her small frame almost invisible under the covers. "Come on, sweetheart. You know the rules. We don't tell anyone about our game. It's our little secret." The words dripped like venom into Sarah's ears, each syllable tightening the knot of fear and fury in her chest. How had she missed this? How had she let this man into their lives? She replayed every moment in her mind, the smiles, the family dinners, the bedtime stories. All of it was stained now, tainted by this sickening revelation. She felt nauseous, the bile rising in her throat as the reality of the situation settled over her like a heavy, suffocating blanket. In the dim light filtering through the blinds, she could barely make out Lily's face, her wide eyes glistening with fear as she glanced toward the door. The sight of her daughter's trembling hands clutching the edge of the blanket nearly broke Sarah's resolve. She wanted to leap from her hiding spot, to rip Mark away from her daughter and never let him near her again. But she couldn't, not yet. She knew that a rash move now would give him the chance to deny everything, to twist the narrative, to gaslight her into questioning what she knew in her heart to be true. With trembling fingers, Sarah pulled out her phone, praying the dim glow wouldn't give her away. Her thumb hovered over the record button for a split second before she pressed it, the small red dot appearing on the screen. She held her breath, straining to hear every word, every movement. Each second stretched into eternity as she waited, poised between fear and rage. Mark's voice dropped even lower, taking on a coaxing tone that made Sarah's skin crawl. "You remember what I told you, right? This is just between us. No one else needs to know. It's our little game." Lily's voice was barely more than a whisper. I don't want to play today." Sarah's heart ached at the sound of her daughter's voice, so small, so frightened. She could hear the tremor in Lily's words, the quiet plea hidden beneath the surface. This wasn't the voice of a child enjoying a game, this was the voice of a child trapped in a nightmare, desperately trying to find a way out. Mark's tone shifted, a hint of irritation creeping in. Now, we've talked about this. It's important to follow the rules, remember? You don't want to disappoint me, do you?" Sarah's fists clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms, the pain grounding her in the moment. She had to stay strong, had to keep listening. But each word cut deeper, a fresh wound in her already shattered heart. She could see Lily's small hands trembling as she gripped the blanket tighter, her knuckles turning white. The sight made Sarah's blood run cold, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she could really hold herself back much longer. Then, something shifted. A small sound, barely audible, caught Mark's attention. It was her phone, slightly slipping in her sweaty grip. The clatter was faint, but in the silence of the room, it felt deafening. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as Mark's head snapped toward the closet. "Is someone there?" Mark's voice wavered, the confidence draining from it. He took a step toward the closet, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the closed door. Sarah felt her heart hammering so hard she was sure it would give her away. This was it. If he opened that door, everything would unravel. Her evidence, her daughter's safety, their entire lives. For a split second, she considered rushing out, trying to stop him before he could fully grasp what was happening. But before she could make a move, Lily's small voice broke through the tension. "It was probably just Mittens, Dad. Can we stop the game today? I don't feel well." The hesitation in Mark's posture was almost imperceptible, but Sarah saw it, a flicker of doubt, a crack in his perfect facade. His attention shifted from the closet back to Lily, the uncertainty in his eyes giving Sarah a sliver of hope. Lily's voice, so shaky yet so determined, had created just enough of a distraction. Mark sighed, his irritation resurfacing. "Fine. We'll take a break today. But remember, you can't tell anyone about our game. Not even your mom. Understand?" Lily nodded silently, her eyes fixed on the floor. The tension in the room lingered as Mark finally turned away, heading for the door. Sarah's grip tightened on her phone. She wasn't ready yet, but she was close. Her time to act was coming. And when it did, she would be ready. The door clicked shut, and Sarah remained frozen in the closet, her heart still pounding in her chest. It took every ounce of strength not to burst out and run to Lily, to hold her daughter close and promise that everything would be okay. But she knew it wasn't over. This was just the beginning. As Sarah slowly emerged from the closet, her mind raced back to the last few months. How could she have missed the signs? The changes in Lily had been subtle at first, a reluctance to play outside, an uneasiness in her smile whenever Mark was around. But Sarah had dismissed it all, chalking it up to preteen mood swings or growing pains. Lily used to be a bright, bubbly child who filled the house with laughter. But lately, her laughter had become rare, replaced by moments of silence and anxious glances toward Mark. There had been nights when Lily would come into Sarah's room, complaining of nightmares and begging to sleep beside her. Sarah had brushed it off as childhood fears, assuming Lily would grow out of it. Now, those memories twisted like knives in her heart. She had been so caught up in her own life, her own happiness, that she failed to see what was happening right in front of her. Mark had seemed perfect, kind, attentive, everything a partner should be. He had stepped into their lives after years of being alone, and Sarah had allowed herself to believe in the fairy tale. But that fairy tale had turned into a nightmare, and she was to blame for not seeing the monster hiding beneath the surface. She replayed yesterday's conversation in her mind. The moment when Lily, with tears in her eyes, had finally spoken up, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you. It's about Mark. I don't want to play his games anymore." Sarah had felt a chill then, but it was nothing compared to the icy fear that gripped her now. At first, she hadn't wanted to believe it. How could the man she loved, the man she trusted, be capable of something so vile? She had tried to push away the doubt, telling herself it was a misunderstanding. But Lily's eyes, filled with terror, had told her the truth that words couldn't fully express. The guilt weighed heavy on her. She should have listened sooner, should have trusted her instincts. Instead, she had allowed herself to be blinded by her need for companionship, her desire for a complete family. How many times had she chosen to overlook the small signs, the way Lily stiffened when Mark hugged her, or how she would quietly slip out of the room whenever he entered? In hindsight, those moments screamed out for attention, but Sarah had convinced herself there was nothing to worry about. Now, the pieces were falling into place, each one sharper than the last. The sudden headaches Lily had complained about, the refusal to go on outings when Mark suggested them, the frequent illnesses that conveniently coincided with weekends spent alone with him, all of it had been leading to this moment. The weight of her own denial crushed her, but there was no time for self-pity. She couldn't change the past, but she could make sure that Mark never laid a hand on her daughter again. She could still be the mother Lily needed her to be, the protector she should have been from the start. The decision was made. She had the partial recording, and she would get more. Sarah would gather every shred of evidence she needed to make sure Mark couldn't worm his way out of this. He would face justice, no matter the cost. As she gently closed the closet door behind her, Sarah took one last look at her daughter, who now sat alone on the bed, staring blankly at the wall. This wasn't just about stopping Mark. It was about reclaiming the light that had been stolen from her child. And no matter what it took, she would do it. The next morning, Sarah woke with a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, but it did nothing to dispel the cold dread that lingered in her bones. She hadn't slept. Instead, she spent the night replaying every moment she had witnessed in that closet, every word that Mark had whispered to Lily. The sickening reality gnawed at her mind, pushing her closer to a breaking point. But there was no time to crumble now. She needed to stay focused, to stay sharp, if she wanted to protect her daughter. Downstairs, the house was eerily quiet. Sarah found Lily curled up on the living room couch, her knees tucked to her chest as she stared blankly at the television. It wasn't even turned on. Sarah's heart broke at the sight of her daughter's distant expression. This was a child who should be carefree, laughing and playing, not locked in the grips of fear. But today was different. Today, Sarah had a plan. "Good morning, sweetheart," Sarah said softly, trying to mask the tension in her voice. Lily looked up and forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Morning, Mom." Sarah walked over and sat next to her, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "How about we go out for breakfast today? Just you and me. We could go to that diner you like. What do you think?" For a moment, a flicker of hope crossed Lily's face. She glanced toward the staircase, as if checking to see if Mark was around. "Is he coming with us?" "No," Sarah replied, keeping her voice even. "Just us girls today. What do you say?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. I'd like that." The simple joy in Lily's agreement filled Sarah with a surge of determination. She had to get Lily out of the house, even if just for a little while. She needed time to gather her thoughts, time to plan her next move without Mark hovering over them. As they got ready, Sarah could feel the knot of anxiety in her chest tighten. Mark was still asleep upstairs, and she was determined to be gone before he woke up. They were just heading out the door when Sarah heard Mark's footsteps coming down the stairs. Her pulse quickened. She gripped the doorknob, praying they could slip out unnoticed, but it was too late. "Where are you two going this early?" Mark asked, his tone casual as he walked into the foyer. Sarah turned to face him, forcing a smile. "We're just going to grab some breakfast. Thought we'd have a little mother-daughter time." Mark's eyes shifted between Sarah and Lily, a hint of suspicion lurking beneath his easygoing demeanor. "Without me?" "That's not fair," he teased, though there was an edge to his words. "I thought you could use some rest," Sarah said quickly. "You've been working so hard lately." Mark's expression softened at the compliment, and he stepped closer to Lily, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You'll bring me back something, won't you, kiddo?" Lily stiffened, and Sarah noticed the way her daughter shrank back ever so slightly. Mark didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he pretended not to. Lily managed a small nod, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Good girl," Mark said, giving her shoulder a light squeeze before turning his attention back to Sarah. "Have fun. I'll see you both when you get back." As they walked out the door, Sarah's mind raced. She had been so close to slipping away unnoticed, but now Mark was aware of their absence. Would he grow more cautious? Would he suspect that she knew something? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but she couldn't let fear paralyze her. She had to push forward. The drive to the diner was filled with silence, broken only by the occasional hum of the engine. Sarah glanced over at Lily, who sat quietly in the passenger seat, her gaze distant. The tension in the car was thick, the air heavy with unspoken words. Sarah wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but she didn't know where to start. Finally, they arrived at the diner. The familiar smell of bacon and coffee filled the air as they walked inside. Sarah and Lily took a booth near the window, and a waitress greeted them with a warm smile. "What can I get you two this morning?" Lily mumbled her order, pancakes with strawberries, before sinking back into her seat. Sarah ordered coffee and toast, more out of habit than appetite. Her stomach was too knotted with anxiety to eat much, but she needed to keep up appearances. As they waited for their food, Sarah decided it was time to gently probe for more information. "Lily, sweetie," she began, keeping her voice calm and reassuring. "Remember what we talked about yesterday? About the games Mark wants to play? Lily's eyes darted to the side, her body tensing. She didn't respond immediately, and Sarah felt her heart sink. It's okay, honey. You don't have to be afraid. I just want to make sure you're safe. Lily swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't like the games, Mom. I don't want to play them anymore. Sarah's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stay composed. You don't have to, sweetheart. I promise you, you won't ever have to play those games again. But I need you to be honest with me, okay? Did anything else happen? Anything you're scared to tell me? Lily's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, biting her lip to hold them back. Sometimes he gets mad if I don't do what he says. He tells me it's our secret and that you wouldn't understand. The words were like a dagger to Sarah's heart. She had been afraid of this, but hearing it confirmed felt like a fresh wound. She reached across the table and took Lily's hands in hers. You did the right thing telling me, Lily. I'm going to keep you safe. But I need you to be strong for just a little longer, okay? We're going to get through this together. Lily nodded again, wiping her tears. I'm scared, Mom. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hands gently. I know, baby. But I promise, it's almost over. As they finished breakfast, Sarah's mind was already working on her next steps. She needed to gather more evidence, and she needed to do it fast. Mark was growing suspicious, and time was running out. But no matter what, she wouldn't let him win. Not now. Not ever. The drive home from the diner was filled with an uneasy silence. Lily fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, occasionally glancing nervously at Sarah, who was lost in thought, strategizing her next move. The moments of fleeting peace from their breakfast had evaporated, replaced by the heavy weight of what lay ahead. When they arrived home, Mark was waiting in the living room, casually flipping through the channels on the TV. The way his eyes lit up when he saw them made Sarah's skin crawl. He stood up with a smile, arms open as if welcoming them back from a normal family outing. Did you two have fun? He asked, his tone light and friendly. Lily didn't respond, her eyes darting to the floor as she clutched Sarah's hand. The subtle tightening of her grip told Sarah everything she needed to know. The fear was still there, ever present beneath the surface, despite the brief moments of calm they'd managed to steal away. Sarah squeezed back, reassuring her daughter that she was not alone. We had a nice time, Sarah replied with forced cheerfulness. It's good to get out and enjoy a girls' day once in a while. Mark's smile widened, but Sarah could see the shadow of suspicion flicker in his eyes. He was reading the atmosphere, picking up on the tension that lingered between them. She couldn't afford for him to sense that something was off, not when she was so close to gathering the proof she needed. That's great, Mark said, his gaze lingering on Lily. How about later, we watch a movie together, just the three of us? Maybe something fun like we used to. Lily stiffened, her face pale. Sarah saw the panic in her daughter's eyes, the silent plea for help that screamed louder than any words. Sarah felt a familiar surge of anger and protectiveness rise within her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She needed to buy time, to find a way to keep Mark away from Lily without raising his suspicions. Actually, Sarah interjected quickly, I was thinking Lily and I could spend some time on her homework this afternoon. It's been a while since we really focused on it together, and she has a few assignments coming up. Mark's smile wavered slightly, his eyes narrowing as he studied Sarah's expression. She could feel the tension growing in the room, like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap at any moment. Homework, huh? Mark's voice held a hint of irritation, but he masked it quickly with a chuckle. Well, I suppose education comes first. But don't forget our movie night, okay? We've got to keep up our traditions. Lily's face remained expressionless, but Sarah noticed the subtle way her daughter moved closer, as if seeking refuge by her side. Mark's words were innocent enough on the surface, but to Sarah, they dripped with unspoken threats, laced with control. The idea of sitting through a family movie night made her stomach turn, but she couldn't afford to show any cracks in her facade. We won't forget, Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. But for now, it's time to focus. Right, Lily? Lily nodded wordlessly, still holding tightly to Sarah's hand. Mark finally stepped back, retreating to the kitchen with a forced grin. I'll leave you ladies to it, then. I'll be in the garage if you need me. The moment he was gone, the air in the room felt lighter, but only slightly. Sarah knelt in front of Lily, brushing a strand of hair away from her daughter's face. It's okay, sweetheart, she whispered. You don't have to be scared. We're going to get through this. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, but she blinked them back, nodding bravely. I'm trying, Mom. I know, Sarah replied, her voice trembling. You're so strong, Lily. I'm proud of you. A plan was forming in Sarah's mind, one that would bring this nightmare to an end. She just needed to gather enough evidence, one more recording, one more damning piece of proof. Then she would go to the police, and Mark would never be able to hurt Lily again. But for now, she had to play along, had to keep up the pretense until she was ready to strike. But time was running out. Mark's patience would wear thin, and Sarah knew she couldn't afford any missteps. They were walking a tightrope, and one wrong move could send them crashing down. But for her daughter, she would find a way to stay balanced, just a little longer. The hours dragged by as the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the living room. Sarah couldn't shake the gnawing dread that clung to her every thought. She knew it was only a matter of time before Mark would try to be alone with Lily again, and she couldn't let that happen. Not now, when she was so close to ending this nightmare. Mark had spent most of the day in the garage, tinkering with his tools and pretending everything was normal. But Sarah could sense the growing tension beneath his calm exterior. He was waiting, biding his time, and she knew he wouldn't stay patient for long. Lily stayed close by Sarah's side, her movements subdued, as if she was trying to make herself invisible. Every so often, Sarah would catch her daughter stealing nervous glances toward the garage door. The fear in Lily's eyes only fueled Sarah's determination. She couldn't wait any longer. She needed to gather more evidence tonight, and this time, she would make sure there was no escape for Mark. When evening rolled around, Mark reappeared in the kitchen with a forced smile. Dinner's almost ready. How about we eat and then watch that movie I mentioned earlier? It'll be nice to spend time together as a family. Sarah's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression neutral. That sounds good, she lied, forcing a smile of her own. Lily, why don't you go wash up? I'll be there in a minute. Lily hesitated, her eyes darting between her mother and Mark, but she nodded and left the room. Once she was out of earshot, Mark leaned against the counter, his eyes narrowing. You've been acting strange all day, Sarah. Is something going on? Sarah's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't flinch. What do you mean? I'm just trying to make sure Lily stays on top of her schoolwork. You know how important it is. Mark studied her, his gaze cold and calculating. You're being distant. It's like you're hiding something. The accusation hung in the air, and for a split second, Sarah considered telling him everything, how she knew about his vile games, how she'd been recording his twisted words, how she planned to take him down. But she bit back the urge. She couldn't blow her cover now, not when she was so close. She had to stay calm, stay in control. I'm not hiding anything, she said, injecting a touch of exasperation into her voice. I've just been stressed out lately. Work, Lily's school, all of it. I didn't realize I was acting different. Mark's expression softened slightly, but his eyes remained sharp. Maybe you just need to relax. Once Lily's asleep, why don't we have a drink, just the two of us? It'll be good for us. The thought of being alone with him made Sarah's skin crawl, but she forced a laugh. Maybe. Let's see how the night goes. The tension eased as Mark seemed satisfied with her response. All right. I'll finish up dinner. Sarah nodded and made her way upstairs to check on Lily. Her daughter was sitting on her bed, staring down at her hands as she absent-mindedly fiddled with her fingers. Sarah knelt beside her and took her hands gently. Hey, sweetheart, how are you holding up? Lily's eyes were filled with worry. I'm scared, Mom. What if he tries to, do it again? Sarah's heart clenched, but she put on a brave face. I won't let him. I promise you, Lily, he won't hurt you anymore. Tonight, we're going to make sure of that. Lily's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? Sarah glanced toward the door to make sure they were alone. I need you to be strong for me, okay? I'm going to get the proof we need tonight. I'll be right here with you the whole time, but I need you to pretend everything is normal. Can you do that for me? Lily hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, Mom. I'll try. Sarah hugged her tightly, whispering, You're so brave. We're almost there. After dinner, they gathered in the living room as planned, the three of them sitting together on the couch. Mark put on a movie, but Sarah barely registered what was happening on screen. Her mind was racing, focused on the plan. The clock ticked slowly, and she could feel the tension building in the room as Mark inched closer to Lily. He kept his tone light, but Sarah saw the way his hand would brush against Lily's shoulder, how he would lean in closer whenever she shifted away. It was all part of his twisted game, and it made Sarah's blood boil. Halfway through the movie, Sarah pretended to yawn. I think I'm going to get ready for bed. It's been a long day. Mark's eyes flicked toward her, then back to Lily. Sure. I'll stay here with Lily until she's ready to go to bed. Sarah knew what he was doing. He was waiting for the moment she left, counting on her absence to continue his disgusting game. But tonight, things would be different. Sarah stood up and kissed Lily on the forehead. I'll be back in a bit, okay? Sleep tight, honey. Lily nodded, but Sarah could see the fear in her eyes. Mark watched Sarah with a thin smile as she headed upstairs, but she had no intention of going to bed. Instead, she quietly slipped into Lily's closet, just like before. She could hear their voices drifting up from the living room, light and playful, but she knew what was lurking beneath. She pulled out her phone, ready to hit record the moment she heard anything out of place. Minutes ticked by, and then she heard it, Mark's low voice, coaxing and insidious. Let's play our game one last time, Lily. Just like before. Sarah's grip tightened on her phone. This was it. She had to act now. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the closet door and stormed down the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She would not let this go on a second longer. Bursting into the living room, Sarah's voice cut through the air like a knife. Get away from her. Mark jerked back, startled, his expression shifting from shock to rage. What the hell are you doing? I'm ending this, Sarah spat, holding up her phone. I've got everything I need. You're done, Mark. It's over. Mark's face twisted with fury as he took a step toward her. You think you can just walk away from this? From me? Sarah stood her ground, adrenaline surging through her veins. I'm not walking away. I'm protecting my daughter from a monster. In that moment, Lily ran to Sarah's side, clinging to her. Mom, I'm scared. Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter, never taking her eyes off Mark. You should be scared, Mark. The police are on their way. Mark's bravado faltered, his eyes darting toward the door as the sound of approaching sirens filled the night air. The realization hit him, and his expression shifted to desperation. Wait, Sarah, we can talk about this. You don't understand, save it for the police, Sarah cut him off, her voice icy. Lily and I are done with you. The lights from the squad cars flashed through the windows, and the pounding on the front door echoed in the living room. Mark's face went pale as he realized there was no escape. For the first time, Sarah saw the fear in his eyes. It was over. The house felt eerily silent after the police took Mark away. The flashing lights and chaos of the night slowly faded, replaced by an uneasy calm. Sarah stood in the living room, clutching Lily close to her chest. The echoes of Mark's shouts, his desperate pleas as they dragged him out, still rang in her ears. But now there was only the sound of Lily's soft sobs and the distant hum of police radios outside. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, whispering reassurances that were as much for herself as for Lily. "It's over, sweetheart. He can't hurt us anymore." But the truth was, Sarah knew this was just the beginning of a long journey. The battle to keep Mark out of their lives wasn't over yet, not with the court proceedings, the legal hurdles, and the emotional healing that lay ahead. But she refused to let the fear of what was coming overshadow the victory of tonight. She had done it. She had protected her daughter. A police officer, a woman with a kind face and gentle eyes, approached them. "Mrs. Blake? We'll need to take your statement, but first, is there someone you can call? A family member or friend who can stay with you tonight?" Sarah's mind raced. Who could she turn to? Her parents lived out of state, and she hadn't confided in any close friends about what was happening. The isolation that Mark had subtly imposed over the years now felt like a wall she had to break through. But there was one person, her best friend, Rebecca. They had drifted apart in recent months, but Sarah knew Rebecca would come if she needed her. "Yes, I can call someone," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Thank you." The officer nodded and handed her a card. "When you're ready, just give this number a call. We'll be here for a while, gathering evidence." Sarah glanced down at the card, feeling the weight of what gathering evidence really meant. Her home, the place where she and Lily had shared so many happy moments, would now be combed through by strangers searching for traces of the darkness that had invaded their lives. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but Sarah knew it was necessary. She guided Lily upstairs to her bedroom, where she gently helped her change into her pajamas. Lily's eyes were red and puffy from crying, and her small body trembled as she tried to hold back more tears. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah knelt down beside her, holding her daughter's hands in hers. "Yes, baby, we're going to be okay. It's going to be hard for a little while, but we'll get through it. We're stronger than you think." Lily nodded, though the fear in her eyes remained. Sarah's heart ached, knowing that Lily's innocence had been stolen in ways she could never fully repair. But she would do everything in her power to make sure her daughter felt safe and loved. As Sarah tucked Lily into bed, she kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm so proud of you for being so brave. I love you more than anything." "I love you too, Mom," Lily whispered back, curling into her pillow. After a few moments of watching Lily's breathing slow, Sarah quietly left the room and returned downstairs. The officers were still moving through the house, documenting everything, but Sarah's focus was on her phone. She needed to call Rebecca. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. The phone rang twice before a familiar, sleepy voice answered. "Sarah? It's late. What's going on?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she tried to find the words. "Rebecca, I really need you. Something terrible has happened. Can you come over?" There was a pause, then Rebecca's voice was firm and filled with concern. "Of course. I'm on my way." Sarah hung up, feeling a small measure of relief. She didn't have to face this alone. Help was coming. It didn't take long for Rebecca to arrive. When she walked through the door, she immediately pulled Sarah into a tight hug. "What happened?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and worry. Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. "It's Mark. He's been hurting Lily. I found out, and the police just took him away." Rebecca's face turned pale with shock, her eyes wide. "Oh my God, Sarah. I can't believe it. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't know for sure until recently," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "I feel like such an idiot. I should have seen the signs, but I was blind." Rebecca shook her head, squeezing Sarah's hands. "You're not to blame for this. You did what you had to do when it mattered most. You protected your daughter. That's what counts." The words brought fresh tears to Sarah's eyes, but this time they were mixed with a sense of validation. For so long, she had doubted herself, questioned her instincts, and felt trapped by her guilt. But hearing Rebecca's reassurance made her realize she had done the right thing. She had faced down the monster in her own home, and she had won. The hours stretched late into the night as the police continued their work. Rebecca stayed by Sarah's side, offering quiet support and helping her through the barrage of questions from the detectives. Eventually, the house grew quiet again. The officers left, promising to keep Sarah updated as the case progressed. The house, once filled with warmth, now felt cold and empty. Sarah and Rebecca sat together in the living room, the weight of the day hanging heavy between them. "What are you going to do now?" Rebecca asked softly. Sarah looked toward the staircase, thinking of Lily asleep upstairs. "I don't know. We'll need to move, I think. There's too much pain in this house now. I want to give Lily the fresh start, somewhere where she can feel safe." Rebecca nodded. "Whatever you need, I'm here for you. We'll get through this." As the clock ticked past midnight, Sarah finally felt the exhaustion catch up to her. But even in the midst of her fatigue, there was a sense of hope, a glimmer of light in the darkness. They had survived the worst, and now they could start to heal. Tomorrow would be the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with challenges, but also the possibility of reclaiming the joy and peace they had lost. And this time, Sarah would never let anyone threaten that again. 2 months had passed since that night, and though the memories still lingered like shadows in the corners of Sarah's mind, life was beginning to take on a sense of normalcy again. The house they once shared with Mark was now just an empty building with bad memories. Sarah had packed up everything she and Lily needed and moved to a new apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't as big or as fancy, but it was theirs, a place where they could start over, free from the darkness that had once consumed their lives. The new apartment was modest but cozy, with warm light pouring in through the large living room windows and filling the space with a sense of peace. There were no echoes of the past here, no remnants of Mark's presence. The walls were freshly painted, the furniture rearranged, and even the air seemed lighter, free of the tension that had once clung to them. Lily's room was filled with the things that brought her comfort, stuffed animals lined up on the bed, her favorite books stacked neatly on a small shelf, and a collection of drawings taped to the walls. The bright colors in her artwork were slowly returning, no longer dominated by dark shades of fear and anxiety. It was a small sign, but to Sarah, it was everything. On this particular Saturday morning, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and watching Lily laugh with a new friend she had made at school. The sound of her daughter's giggles filled the room, a melody that Sarah had missed more than she'd realized. There was still a long way to go, therapy sessions, difficult conversations, and days where the weight of what had happened would feel unbearable, but for now, there was joy. And that was enough. Lily and her friend, Sophie, were huddled over a board game, whispering and giggling as they plotted their next moves. The sight made Sarah's heart swell with gratitude. Lily had found a friend who made her feel safe, who brought out the side of her that had been hidden for too long. Rebecca stopped by later that morning, as she often did on weekends. She and Sarah had grown closer since everything had come to light. Rebecca had been a lifeline, helping Sarah navigate the complexities of the legal process while providing a shoulder to lean on. The case against Mark was moving forward, but it was a slow process, filled with court dates and legal proceedings that left Sarah emotionally drained. But knowing that justice was within reach kept her going. "How are you holding up?" Rebecca asked, placing a bag of groceries on the counter. She had a knack for bringing by little things to make life easier, snacks for Lily, fresh produce for Sarah, or just a bottle of wine for them to share. "Better," Sarah said with a soft smile. "Lily's doing well. She's been talking more in her therapy sessions, opening up about everything. It's hard to hear, but I know it's helping her heal." Rebecca nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "She's a strong kid. Just like her mom." Sarah laughed lightly, shaking her head. "Some days I don't feel so strong. But I'm trying. For her." "You're doing more than trying, Sarah. You're rebuilding your life. That takes more strength than you realize." The two women shared a quiet moment of solidarity, knowing that while the worst was behind them, the road ahead still held challenges. But for the first time in months, there was hope, a hope that things could be good again, that happiness could be more than just a fleeting moment. As the day wore on, Sarah watched as Lily and Sophie played outside in the small park across the street from their apartment. The sun was shining, and the sound of children's laughter filled the air. It was the kind of day Sarah had once feared they might never have again, simple, carefree, and filled with the promise of a better tomorrow. When the girls came back inside, flushed and smiling, they begged Sarah to take them to the ice cream shop down the block. It was a place they had discovered shortly after moving in, and it had quickly become a favorite spot. Sarah couldn't resist their excited pleas and soon found herself walking hand in hand with Lily while Sophie skipped alongside them. The ice cream shop was small and charming, with colorful decor and a cheerful atmosphere. The girls spent several minutes debating which flavors to choose before finally settling on chocolate and strawberry. As they sat together at a table near the window, enjoying their treats, Sarah felt a sense of peace that had been absent for far too long. This was what she had fought for, moments like these, where Lily could just be a kid again. Afterward, they headed to the nearby park where the girls ran off to play on the swings and slide. Sarah sat on a bench, her gaze following Lily as she laughed and played without a care in the world. It was moments like this that reminded Sarah that, despite everything they had been through, there was still so much joy to be found. The scars would never fully fade, but they would learn to live with them, to find beauty in the healing process. Rebecca joined her on the bench, holding 2 cups of coffee she had grabbed from a nearby cafe. "You look more relaxed than I've seen you in a while," she observed. "I am," Sarah admitted, taking a sip of the warm drink. "For the first time, I feel like we can actually move forward. There's still a lot to face, but I'm ready now." "We're ready." As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the world in golden hues, Sarah realized how far they had come. The fear and darkness that once seemed insurmountable were now behind them, replaced by the steady light of a new beginning. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that the future could be bright. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she and Lily could face them, together, stronger than ever. That night, after a long day filled with laughter and a sense of peace that had been missing for so long, Sarah tucked Lily into bed. The soft glow of a nightlight bathed the room in a warm, comforting light. Sarah sat beside her daughter, brushing a stray hair away from her face as Lily settled into her pillow. "Did you have fun today?" Sarah asked, her voice gentle. Lily nodded, a sleepy smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, it was a really good day, Mom. I like our new place. And Sophie's nice." "I'm glad you like it," Sarah said, her heart swelling with love. "You deserve to be happy, Lily. You deserve all the good things in the world." Lily's eyes grew heavy, but before sleep could take her, she looked up at Sarah with a serious expression. "Mom, do you think there are other kids like me at school? Kids who have bad secrets?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The question hung between them, heavy and heartbreaking. She could see the concern in Lily's eyes, the empathy that came from understanding a pain no child should ever have to bear. "There might be," Sarah admitted, her voice soft but steady. "But if there are, they don't have to go through it alone. We can help them." Lily's brow furrowed in thought. "How can we help?" Sarah took a deep breath, contemplating her answer. "We help by being kind, by being someone they can talk to if they're scared. Sometimes, just knowing someone cares can make a big difference. And if we ever see someone who looks like they're hurting, we tell an adult we trust, okay?" Lily nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. "Okay, Mom. I don't want anyone else to feel like I did." "You're so strong, Lily," Sarah whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're so brave and kind. You make me proud every single day." Lily smiled, her eyes fluttering closed as sleep finally began to claim her. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, leaning down to kiss her daughter's forehead. "More than anything in the world." Sarah stayed by Lily's side until she was sure she was asleep. Watching her daughter's peaceful face, she marveled at the resilience children could have, even after facing something so terrifying. There was still innocence in Lily's smile, still hope in her eyes, and Sarah was determined to nurture that hope, to give her daughter the life she deserved. Once Lily was sound asleep, Sarah quietly slipped out of the room and headed to the living room. She sank into the couch, exhaustion tugging at her, but she couldn't rest just yet. The battle they had fought was mostly behind them, but the journey wasn't over. There would be more therapy sessions, court appearances, and hard conversations ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Sarah didn't feel overwhelmed by it all. She felt ready. Rebecca had left earlier, but not before they made plans to meet up again the next weekend. Sarah smiled to herself, grateful for the friendship that had helped pull her through some of her darkest days. She had learned the hard way that isolation only deepened the shadows. Now, with a strong support system and a renewed sense of purpose, she knew she could face whatever challenges came next. As she gazed out the window at the quiet, moonlit street, Sarah allowed herself to dream about the future. Maybe she could get involved in a support group, or even volunteer at an organization that helped kids like Lily. It was still just a seed of an idea, but it was a start, something to grow into as she and Lily moved forward with their lives. There would be dark days ahead, she knew that. The scars left by Mark's betrayal would take time to fully heal, and some wounds might never fade completely. But those scars would not define them. They were reminders of how far they had come, and of the strength they had found in each other. For the first time in a long time, the future felt bright. And no matter what came next, Sarah knew one thing for certain: they would face it together, with hope guiding them through even the darkest of days.